Hello everyone, welcome back to Amy's Bookshelf. Okay, so I wanted to give you some book recommendations. So as I normally do when I'm creating content, I was trying to think of a theme. I was like thrillers or maybe like romances. And then I realised I didn't really have a theme, and actually I didn't need a theme. So this video is literally just me telling you to read these 6 books that are in no way connected, but I think are really good and I think you should read. So let's get going. Okay, so we've got 1 non-fiction and I think 5 fiction. You'll see once I've finished. And they're all books I've either rated 4 or 5 stars, but you know, they've stayed with me for whatever reason, and I definitely think that everyone should talk about them more and everyone should go read them. First up is Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. This is a romance. So the plot of this book, Jack meets Kate and they fall in love and everything is going great until 6 months later Kate dies, and when she does it forces Jack to go back in time and he finds himself in the day that they met and he relives that time over and over again. So this forces him to decide what to do with this time and ultimately how to save Kate's life. If it sounds heartbreaking, it's because it is, and I do think it's a wonderful romance and a really, really great storyline as well, which sometimes romances are lacking. So this is a great romance and a great storyline. I'm a sucker for like a Groundhog Day style plot. I don't know why, but I think they're really clever and I really enjoy them in any genre, but I think a romance is a really interesting place to have one. Will this break your heart? Absolutely, but I promise it is worth it. Next is Instructions for a Heatwave by Maggie O'Farrell. So it is London and it is the 70s and it is the middle of a blazing heatwave. Robert goes out and tells his wife that he's going to get a paper, I think, and basically never comes back. And his disappearance forces their estranged family to come together, including their children, and it is ultimately just a story of this one family. It has a little bit of a kind of like mystery to it because of his disappearance, but yeah, ultimately it's just sort of this story about a family. I loved how much this book focuses on like the mundane and the relationships in the family and just ordinary people. It's like this introspective look at this random household in London, and I think it's ultimately a book that could be about anybody. I know how much everyone loves Hamnet. I didn't love Hamnet, but I think this is the Maggie O'Farrell book that deserves way more praise. I think this will always be my favourite of hers, and it is definitely worth the read. The Timekeeper by Mitch Albom. Mitch Albom is one of those authors that I definitely need to read more from, especially because I love The Timekeeper, but I know people really love Tuesdays with Morrie, so I need to at least read that one and then try and read some more from him as well. The story of The Timekeeper follows Dor, who's just this ordinary man who's fascinated with the idea of time, and he creates lots of instruments in order to measure time. But God doesn't like this, and as a punishment, he banishes Dor to this cave to live in solitude, and while there, he hears all the desperate cries from humanity about how they want to alter time, and thus Father Time is born. It's really, really fascinating storyline because I just love how it talks about time, and time is something that affects everybody, obviously, and I just love how much it really does a deep dive into the idea of time, how much it affects all of our lives, how much we want to change it, and how it really does control us as well, and how we're all born with a ticking clock that will eventually stop. It's really well written. It's got like a supernatural feel to it, although it's not supernatural, and it just makes you think about the bigger questions, which I love. Now, the only non-fiction in this list, which is The Last Act of Love by Kathy Rensenbrink. This is the only book I've read by her, but I believe she does have others, and this is the story of her and her brother. When she was 17, her brother Matty was hit by a car and subsequently never walked or talked again, and 8 years after the accident, he dies. We know that from the blurb, that is not a spoiler. So the book really just explores the emptiness that he left behind, his relationship with Kathy, and how she really never got over the loss. It's a really beautiful exploration of grief, and I love that it was as much about Kathy's story as it was about the story of her love for her brother and their relationship. And I think what's most heartbreaking about the book is, well, 2 things. Firstly, you forget that it's a true story, and secondly, you kind of hold out hope that Matty will survive, even though you know literally from the blurb that he is going to die. That just proves what a brilliant writer she is, and obviously how good she is at telling his story. Now we have How We Disappeared by Jing Lee. This is set in World War II, mainly about the Japanese occupation of Singapore. Our protagonist Wang Di is taken from her family, forcefully taken from her family, and forced to be a comfort woman for the soldiers during the war. And then it flips between that time and 60 years later, where she's never really recovered from the trauma of what happened. Now, it goes without saying, this is a very harrowing story. There are very hard parts to it, and yeah, it is really difficult to read in places. But I really do think it's so well written and immensely profound, and really it's just a sucker punch of a plot. I think it'll have you gripped both with the plot and the action and the emotion of the story as well. The characters are amazing, really three-dimensional and well thought through, and it's very hard to put down. You'll feel really connected to the story. I also think it does a great job of giving readers a perspective they might not have read before, and if you are a person who has only ever read a World War II book that is set in Europe, then I would recommend picking up How We Disappeared, because it gives a completely new perspective on the war, and obviously one that a lot of people lived through, and we really should make sure that we are not learning about history only through one lens. So for that alone, you should pick up a copy of How We Disappeared. And finally, because Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is getting so much attention, I thought it was about time I talked about Elsewhere by Gabriella Zevin. Now, I've not read Tomorrow, and I know how much everyone loves it. I do want to read it, I just haven't yet. I haven't got myself a copy. But this was a book I fell in love with when I was about 16. Me and my sister read it and we both adored it, and I really, really need to reread it. So this centres on Liz, who is also 16 in the book, and it's obviously got like a young adult perspective. She is killed at the beginning of the book in a hit and run accident, and she finds herself in the afterlife, which is called Elsewhere. Now, Elsewhere kind of appears to look like Earth and appears to have ordinary people in it. However, there is a catch, and that is everybody is ageing backwards. Now, firstly, I really love seeing other people's perceptions of the afterlife. I'm obsessed with The Good Place for a start, but I also love reading about it as well. I think it's so cool to see what people think might happen when we die, because it's something we are just never going to be able to find out until we do. So I love it for that alone. But I also loved how simple this narrative was, because it is just like real life with one catch: everyone's aging backwards instead of forwards. And ultimately, once everybody is back down to zero, they are reborn back into the world, which I also loved, because it's kind of like this big circle. I think one logistical problem with a lot of afterlives is they go on forever, and forever is a very hard thing to comprehend. So I enjoyed that this had a finality to it, and you knew at what point everybody was going to stop their existence in the afterlife and move on to somewhere else. Also just a very emotional book, and obviously it's sad at the beginning, and there's twinges of sad throughout, but I loved that Liz kind of found herself and found a new way to live in this afterlife. There's a lot of hope, a lot of love, a lot about friendship, and yeah, it's a really brilliant story. And like I said, I've not read Tomorrow, but I think if you love that, I'm sure you will love this as well. So that is all my books. That was just a short video for you, but I just wanted to give you some recommendations, and I thought I don't need a theme, I'm just going to give the people what they want and tell them some good books to read. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like it if you did, and please subscribe to my channel as well, and I will bring you new content very soon. Bye!